is a company based out of Troy, Michigan, and the chamber has a relationship with Allcom through one of our other members of our chamber. So it's with great pleasure to introduce David to you, who will begin the presentation. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. So welcome, everybody. Mark and I have had an opportunity to have a number of discussions on this topic over the last few weeks, and as a part of that, decided it maybe be helpful to kind of host a webinar and answer questions and have some dialogue around the unique situation we're all in relative to working from home and what that means both from a technology standpoint, but also even from a leadership standpoint. So I know the message is that we're stressing to our team members and our clients are, one, make sure you take care of your family and yourself. Make sure you're staying connected with each other. We're all in this together, so let's be supportive and helpful as best we can as part of this process, and that's part of what we're trying to do today as well. So along those lines, just to give you a little bit of brief kind of understanding of Allcom and kind of our background and what we do. We are a strategic IT services firm, which means we partner with our clients to deliver technology services to small to mid-sized organizations that really need to leverage technology for it to be a strength of their organization, to grow and scale their business, to increase their ways of collaborating both internally and externally. And that long-term relationship is a part of our process to really become their IT services team. So as a part of that process, as Mark mentioned, we've got a great relationship with a member of the Michigan Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and that's a part of our relationship to the chamber and how we have kind of come to be engaged and involved in the organization. So we're certainly glad to be here and participating and helping all of you understand kind of how we better connect and work remotely together and continue to have business function as close to normal as we possibly can. So with that, I'm gonna dive right in as part of some of the things that we want to make sure and cover today. And the first thing we'll kind of get started with is just kind of what's it mean for work from home? What are some of the key components that are out there that need to be in place? Certainly the right equipment and hardware that's in place. So whether that be a laptop along with the external monitors or docking stations or other equipment like that, that's a critical component. We do strongly recommend that equipment is owned and managed and controlled by the organization and not a personal laptop, especially at times like this. I know it can be challenging to be able to have people work from home if they don't normally have a laptop in the office. And easy for them to be able to connect from their home personal laptops, but those machines that are not completely managed and controlled by the organization do pose a little bit of a higher risk. So it's important that that is a work kind of company laptop that's managed from that. And then certainly they need to have the right equipment from a standpoint of getting connected. So high-speed internet through Comcast, Wide Open West, AT&T, and so forth is important. And then the second component that we recommend on that, we'll get into some of the security stuff later, but making sure that it's a secure connection as well is important. Access to key systems. So some of the things that we strongly recommend, anytime you can go to a cloud-based solution through software as a service, whether that be the Office 365 environment or other applications, ERP systems, CRM, accounting, etc., that can be leveraged through the cloud. There's significant flexibility and scale advantages to that. So we strongly recommend that. For those resources that are in the office, access to those when remote can be done through a VPN, which is a virtual private network. That's simply just a secure tunnel connection between wherever you are and where the network is that you're connecting to. So in the case of an office worker, a VPN would connect them from their home to the office location in a secure way that allows them to work and perform functions as if they were in that office network directly. And then obviously the Wi-Fi security at home and on mobile. We'll talk a little bit more about some of the security stuff again, but making sure that is a secured connection through Wi-Fi, even if it's the basic component of making sure that you've got a different password and login access to your Wi-Fi than what was ever the default coming from Comcast is a good start. In terms of collaboration tools, obviously, if we're all in the office, it's easy to walk down the hall, maybe even pick up the phone and dial a four-digit extension, et cetera, to be able to connect with different people. And so what we recommend that even within the office and for the remote staff that are connecting with people outside, in and outside the office, it's really important to be able to have tools that allow that connection. And that's not just during COVID-19 circumstances like we're in today, but really at any time where there's access to real-time chat, video and screen sharing, remote meetings, all of those kind of components have a huge impact. Video specifically, we've been using a lot of video at Allcom. We had a company meeting this morning that everybody was on as part of and using video. So being connected together, we've got clients that are doing social hours with video, and so they all get on a Teams meeting at 5 o'clock for a social wine hour, and there's no specific business agenda. They're just kind of hanging out and connecting and talking about what's going on in the world and what's going on in their life, and being able to connect in new and unique ways. So great impact of being able to leverage video along those lines is a valuable tool as well. So when working from home, some of the things to be thinking about, what we recommend are designate a specific workplace. So an area where it's comfortable and quiet, ideally distraction free. I know for those of us with kids and young kids, that can be more or less a challenge at different times. But the better you can get to some place that's designated as your work area, then we think that's a huge benefit. Start your workday the same. So wake up at the same kind of times, get ready as you normally would, keep to your normal working hours, and take breaks as you maybe even more so than you normally would. So one of the things that I've found, I've always had the flexibility to work from home at different times, but I've largely been in the office contributor and leader of the organization. That's important for me to have a physical presence as well. But I do occasionally work from home. What I found over the past week of working from home is going from meeting to meeting to meeting, where everybody comes to me in front of my computer and my webcam, is a very different environment than me walking around and having direct conversations with different people and going to different meetings, different conference rooms, in and out of the office, that type of thing. And one of the things I found I need to do is get out of the chair and make sure that I'm not just sitting there all day going from meeting to meeting to meeting. So whether it be go upstairs and take a check on the kids and see what's going on with homework and school schedules and activity around that, or whatever it might be, get a glass of water and so forth, just being able to get out of the chair and take a break, because if you don't pay attention to that, you literally can look up at the end of the day and it's 7 o'clock at night and you've been in your same work location all day and lost track of really what's going on, and probably not very effective doing it that way. So some of the other things relative to expectations and accountability. Working from home, I know a lot of organizations have concerns around, well, how productive is my team going to be? Do they understand the importance of how we're all going to be working together and keeping the service for your clients up to where it needs to be? Really all that kind of centers around making sure you're setting clear expectations for what that productivity and remote schedule is. If you have team members that are used to well working at the same time, if they maintain their work schedules and those are expected, then you know when they're going to be available, versus those that may conclude, you know what, I'm changing my schedule, I'm working from noon to 9 o'clock. You need to set the parameters and boundaries on that, if that's okay or not, or if you still need them working more of the 9 to 6, 9 to 5 schedule, whatever that might be, just as if they're in the office. So make sure the expectations are clear. Maintain connections, so frequency of connectivity. We do a daily stand-up with our operations team at 7:40 every morning, and it's just an opportunity for us to connect on what's going on with clients, what's going on in the outside world, what questions do people have, what's the focus for the day. Getting clarity and kind of a team group around that is really important for us. And we try to do that even around the cadence of the work that we're doing. So what's the daily stand-up, what's the objectives for the week, what's the objectives for the month, how we can keep in focus on what those priorities are and how we're doing that together as a team. So important things relative to some of those kind of components. Relative to some of the tools, there's a ton of different tools out there. We're using Teams from Microsoft today. I love that tool from a ongoing regular communication tool, and it allows us to do a lot of different things. On the document collaboration side of things, we're able to save and access documents through Teams. It significantly simplifies access. It manages versions. We get everyone working from the same document. I know most organizations are out there using file shares or the server where they have an H drive or S drive or whatever the drive mapping letter is that gets to their primary documents. If you have a VPN, that works okay as well. But some of the next advanced tools and what a lot of organizations are moving to is the document collaboration for through Microsoft Teams and SharePoint, and a great way to be able to really have easy access to documents and work together on that. I know we're continuing to access documents, create documents, share documents as a team, all collaborate on those documents, really no differently than if we were all in the office. So a lot of benefits to that from a work from home standpoint. But again, a lot of benefits to that even if we're all in the office together working. And then the other component is the real-time collaboration. So we talked a little bit about that on the one-to-one or team meetings. It creates a lot of flexibility for where work is happening. So if people need to work from home because they have a sick child or they are sick or different appointments going on, or just looking for some of that extra flexibility to do that a day or so a week, having that flexibility as part of your workforce is a huge benefit and a huge advantage for them. So we think that's important to be able to have those tools in place to be able to facilitate that. We see a lot of increased productivity with that, even for those that are in the office. One of the things we talk about is, even from a simple laptop standpoint, even those staff that work mostly from their desk in the office, we still recommend and deploy out laptops for those staff because mobility within the office can be a huge advantage for them to be able to work from a conference room or work from a different location as they collaborate with team members. Having some of these real collaboration tools is a big part of that. To increase that productivity, employee experience and satisfaction are a big part of that as well. So having those tools in place is important. And as part of that kind of solution, I want to cover a little bit about what some of those tools are. We mentioned a little bit on Teams. Teams is kind of a way to really be able to connect with those in your organization easily through real-time chat, video calls, one-to-one screen sharing, document management. All those kind of components are a part of that. New ways to be able to communicate and securely access files, all the different components on that. And the cool thing with that is that as a part of your Office 365 subscription, if you're a part of that online Office 365 environment, that's where you're getting your email and your Office licensing and all those components are being done, then Teams is an included component of that. So there's no additional cost to do that. In that case, for those that are on Office 365. So it's a great tool to be able to take advantage of. And it's really just a matter of turning it on and knowing how to use it and getting started kind of going down that path. Some other tools we think are also important. These are tools that are typically leveraged for more specific webinar discussions. So taking a meeting and going online. Obviously, we're using Teams today as a part of this process, knowing there is only going to be 20 or so people that are going to be on the webinar itself. It's a fine tool to be able to use that, share screens, do video, and kind of collaborate together. And so we wanted to be able to give that feel for it. But there's a lot of different tools out there. If you're going to a larger kind of team setting where you want to control functions of can people raise their hand? Can I do some different breakout groups? Can I manage the webinar and standpoint of who's in what sections doing different things within the meeting, access to those types of solutions and some of the advanced kind of things to really manage a large conference online. These are some of the tools that are typically being used, especially with the GoToWebinar and Zoom are some of our favorite ones out there to be able to facilitate that and helping our clients facilitate how they do that today is certainly a big topic for a lot of folks. But think of it as the idea of Teams is a great ongoing collaboration tool. The chat and the real-time connection with everybody in the organization or outside the organization, great for smaller group webinars and so forth like that. The larger that group gets, then the more it's advantageous to take advantage of a solution like a Zoom or GoToWebinar or something along those lines. So as any part of any solution and any good technology and business advocate will tell you, security needs to be a part of most conversations. This has been a unique topic at a unique time because of the situation we're all in together. It actually creates a unique and ripe opportunity for bad actors to get a hold of data. And so leveraging the idea that everybody is at home doing work, leveraging the idea that organizations are disconnected and the CFO and the CEO don't have an office next to each other, but are likely many miles apart, working from their home locations. There's a lot of opportunity for increased phishing, increased hacking, access to networks that are at home that are not as secure as they probably need to be. So this we wanted to put in here to be able to be mindful of security. So normal best practices in terms of complex passwords, the longer the password, the better, changing those on a fairly frequent basis, and use of even a password management system in order to be able to keep those passwords unique. Wi-Fi security, we talked a little bit about that, making sure your home Wi-Fi is secured and is protected at least through a good password to access your Wi-Fi network, and preferably not the default coming from the provider. And avoiding public Wi-Fi, that's a little bit easier today than when it was a week and a half ago. Not a lot of public Wi-Fi happening right now today, obviously, but being able to avoid the public Wi-Fi is a good thing. Use your mobile hotspot or connect through the VPN if you have that to be able to facilitate a secure connection. And then mobile devices, just a normal reminder on using passcodes, ensuring data is protected and encrypted, and a process in place to handle those lost or stolen devices, even in a situation like we're all in today, working largely from home. So security is an important component, and just wanted to kind of have that as a reminder as part of this process. And it's easy to get lost in the how are we going to be productive and how are we going to work and how are we going to continue operations and lose sight of security. Don't let it get too far out of your sight, because it's an important factor for what needs to get done to be successful today. So I think maybe my biggest message, and I hinted at this earlier, is that working from home can be just as productive as working in the office. And it's not about just being in a position where we're in a COVID-19 restricted access to office and other people and are forced into a situation where we're working from home. These tools provide a great deal of flexibility and productivity and positive client and employee experience as you're working through them. So we believe they're critical tools to have in place, regardless of the situation in the outside world. They certainly provide new and additional benefits and advantages in today's world, but making sure your team has the right tools is critical. So the mobility with the laptop, the real-time collaboration tools in place all the time, really drive productivity, flexibility from a workforce standpoint, and certainly pay dividends in times like today. The second thing we talked about really was the making sure that expectations and accountability are clear. So whether that be through emails, company stand-ups, one-to-one meetings with managers and team members, making sure you continue to have that same kind of dialogue and expectations for when people are working from home are critical to kind of be clear and keep reminders out there about what is expected from a work from home environment, even if you're in a situation of normal operations and normal businesses, like we'll hopefully all be back to in the not too distant future. And then the third component is, again, just a reminder on security, making sure that you don't lose sight of that. That's a critical component of anything that's going on today as it relates to work from home and being able to secure the environment and protect the client data and the organization data. So having said that, that's really what we wanted to make sure that we covered today. We intentionally wanted to be fairly brief with this so we could have dialogue and questions from folks. So if you have questions, you can just go ahead and unmute and voice your question or comment. You can certainly also send a chat message to the group if you prefer to put your question in that way, and I'm glad to answer those and take any questions you may have related to this new environment and what it's like working remote.
Well, this is Mark Moreno again. First of all, thank you, David, for taking the time to share these insights with us. I think for some of us, they seem relatively simple and things that we should have already been mindful of. But as you mentioned, in the day-to-day operations, it's not always at the forefront. And given the circumstances, this is a great reminder of how we should be operating from a protective and security standpoint, as well as offering the flexibility and continuing to keep the communication lines open between yourself and other colleagues and supervisors within your organization to understand expectations and really seek to meet those objectives. So thanks again for that. I'll go ahead and start the questioning here, David. You mentioned Microsoft 365, the Teams that we're using right now. Is it mandatory that if somebody doesn't have 365 already loaded on their computer, are they even able to access this call, or is it something that is needed to be installed to even participate in someone else's call?
Yeah, good question, Mark. So think of Office 365 as really just a platform for Microsoft to license their Office products and email solutions. And so by having, for example, if you're, I know the Chamber of Commerce is on Office 365. So as a part of that process, you have your email address. If you were to go to office.com and log into that website, you would have access to those different resources through your normal login and credentials email that you use for email access. And as a part of that process, you have access to Teams and Planner and all the resources that are there based on what your licensing level is. But once you access that online, you can access Teams through a web browser, but there's also easy ways from there to download the full Teams client. So it's an install of Teams specifically. So similar to the way you download and install Outlook, Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, etc. Teams is a download just like that. And once you then launch that Teams application, you log into there with your email address and your normal credentials for Office 365, and then have access there, along with anybody else that's within your organization will show up for you to be able to add as a frequent contact or to initiate a chat with or make a Teams audio video call with directly. So there's a lot of those different components that you can leverage from that Office 365 platform. For those that are outside your organization that may not have Office 365, it could be an example of that today. So the meeting invite that we sent out was just a link to a web page that people can dial into a phone number, or they can click a link on a web page and access the Teams environment from that standpoint without having Office 365 or without having a license requirement for it. And be able to use, if they don't want to download the full client, they can just use the web interface kind of access to that.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I'll open it up to any further questions that anyone may have. And once you ask your question, please go ahead and mute your microphone to allow David an opportunity to answer.
No other questions, looks like. we must have covered them pretty well in terms of the content we wanted to have. Hopefully that's the case. Mark, did you have anything else on questions from you?
No. Well, you already answered the one I was going to ask in terms of protecting, your assets and the company assets for which you work for, because I'm hearing on some newscasts that this this situation could escalate. Phishing activities that are out there, as you already mentioned, and I think your comments were spot on in terms of protecting ourselves and the equipment and information, right? That is out there, the data, and we need to do everything that we can to do that.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that phishing has already been huge on the rise in terms of what was happening in that environment, and typically the situation is a phishing attack that an email comes, it looks like it's from the CEO to maybe the CFO or the controller about an invoice that needs to get paid, and it's urgent to go ahead and do that. So the attackers usually create a false sense of urgency around the situation, requesting something to get paid. And as a part of that process, sometimes organizations that are following best practices anyway put in place a verification process on that. Sometimes in times like this, those processes aren't as followed as closely as they need to be. In addition to the fact that there's also a situation of people not being in a place where in a place where they can really connect and interact with people. So if I can't walk next door to verify to the CEO that invoice really needs to get paid, and it's an extra step to do that, then that becomes more challenging that way too.
Yes, I agree. Okay, well, if there are no further questions, maybe my last one to you, David, would be, you have your email address on here in your company website. Any offerings that you would like to make to the guests and the participants that are online relative to your services at Allcom?
Well, I don't know if it's specific to our services, but certainly any questions and comments or thoughts that anybody has, we'd be glad to take those and answer those and have an opportunity to have a conversation, a dialogue more specific to their organization, what they're trying to do. Not so much really from a sales standpoint, really just from a consultative kind of approach where we can be helpful in challenging times like we're all experiencing today. So if there's an opportunity for us to be able to help and do that, we certainly want to be a part of that and are glad to have those conversations or answer questions or whatever might be as part of this process.
Okay, well, thank you very much again, David, and to your entire team for assisting the MHCC in hosting this webinar. Hopefully for those that were able to participate, you found it insightful and have some takeaways that you can communicate within your organization in order to better allow you to be successful as you work remotely during these days. So thank you again, everyone, and have a good day.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.